Hi, I'm Beverly Banor Brown, and in my 30-some-odd years now as an intuitive who does intuitive readings and life and relationship coaching, I'm also a classically trained life coach. I've worked with groups, individuals, families, couples, young children, all the way up to people in their 90s. And one of the things that I've found in working with my clients and actually in my own life experience is that if we're not careful, if we're very sympathetic, very empathetic, we often can get drawn in, lured to listen to people who really are triangulating us into their rather sticky web of difficulty, which you will find over time they have no intention of really changing. What do I mean by triangulation? What is it? And how can you, if you've gotten into it, get out as diplomatically and as firmly and as quickly as possible? I worked with a client many years ago, a lovely young woman who was having a lot of difficulty because of certain codependent tendencies in her personality, setting healthy boundaries. She met a man at work who often enjoyed having lunch with her. They would go for walks in a nearby park. They'd often bring their own lunches and sometimes share things, and they really became quite close. He was engaged to be married, and at first he talked to this client of mine like his fiancée was God's gift to the entire universe. She could do no wrong. She was beautiful and intelligent, creative, successful at her work, very loving and affirming to him. He was absolutely beyond thrilled. My client, who was single at the time and getting over a breakup, a rather painful disappointment where she had been engaged and it had been broken off and she was reeling still from it. So having this male companionship was particularly welcome. And she was happy for him and happy for his fiancée. She met the fiancé, they all had dinner out a couple of times, and she shared his phenomenally high estimation of this woman he was about to marry. So what was the problem, you might ask? A reasonable question, and let me answer it. They went away, he and his fiancée, on a weekend trip. Something happened. She started to ask him some questions about his past. Certain things that he had told her, she was starting to realize, didn't really feel right to her. The fiancé started to evidence a certain lack of belief in the stories he had, it turned out, in many cases, concocted to present a very favorable impression of himself so that she would fall in love with him, which is exactly what she had done. The man was outraged, totally and absolutely outraged. However, he never told his fiancée at that point while they were away on the weekend. As soon, however, as he got back to work, he engaged my client in a rather lengthy, during lunchtime break, diatribe against his fiancée. He put her down in every imaginable way, told her all kinds of details about their sex life she really didn't particularly want to hear. TMI, too much information all the way around. My client at that time, as I had mentioned before, had difficulties with honestly setting and expressing boundaries. She wanted this man's friendship. She felt that by listening to him, she might be a mediating factor in the relationship he had with his fiancée, but to no avail. She would listen and listen some more each day. This went on for several weeks. only to find out that he was not telling his fiancée anything about his feelings of hurt or anger or fear about their relationship. He was venting it all onto my client. She then would feel drained, exhausted. And he, who was already living with his fiancée, would go home and be charming and adorable and romantic and pretend that everything was fine. His fiancée, did I mention, was a very wealthy woman with several homes, with beautiful fancy cars, with a beautiful boat, a wealthy family who had made it clear that once they were married, he was going to be taken into the financial fold, so to speak, and that he really could count on a very easy lifestyle. So this became a pattern. And my client was extremely unhappy about this and felt that he really was behaving in ways that were less than in integrity. Integrity was a very core value with my client, and she wanted very much for him to either stop the behavior, talk to his fiancée directly, or leave her out of it. In working with her during a session, we came up with a strategy. She was easily able then to go back, set the boundary, and make it clear to him that if he had no intention of changing things, and that what he wanted more than anything was to be married to this woman because of all the perks, he really was behaving in a way that was totally dishonest, and she wanted no further part of it. What she had gotten involved with was the height of the definition, as I use it, of triangulation. He had golden nugget number 1 for today about how to spot this and get free of it right now. If you're listening to somebody like this man was, who for whatever the reason is a drain on you, is somebody who possesses many of the narcissistic traits. In this case, this guy was a what have you done for me lately and what can you do for me now kind of person. Also, as many narcissists and energy vampires do, crazy makers, drama kings, drama queens, they don't want to take a chance that if one relationship falls apart, they'll be left in the lurch. And so by getting closer and closer to my client, he was keeping her in the background as a potential relationship backup if his fiancée changed her mind about him. Next golden nugget, if you find that they're just venting, that they really have no intention whatsoever of changing the situation, they just really want you to listen to them, you must remember that a narcissist, a crazy maker, an energy vampire wants attention. Attention is part of the battery charger supply they need, like a heroin addict or a cocaine addict. They have to be heard, they have to be seen, they have to get from outside of themselves, because they have often very little ego strength within them. They have to get somebody from outside to give them the attention. And, next golden nugget, remember that even negative attention is often preferable to them than no attention at all. So engaging with you, having you listen, even if you disagree with them, trying very hard to lure you into aligning with their perspective, and yet having no real intention to change in any way, so that there is no movement going forward, no positive change that's going to happen because they have no real desire for it, or if they do, they don't know how to make it happen, is a tip-off for you that you have become involved in a triangulated situation, a triangle. And yet, here's the irony, next golden nugget, remember, you're the odd person out, because the relationship is already established. They very likely will never leave it. They very likely are not only narcissistic energy vampire behavior people, they also have probably a certain amount of codependency going on and are probably fairly bonded with this individual They're not going to leave. So you are basically in a dead-end situation that is not going to bring you any sort of positive outcome, either as a helper or as a well-intended friend. And if you have any hope that perhaps these people will break up if it's a romantic situation, and that you will be the so-called, in quotes, lucky recipient of their new affection, unquote, I would suggest, next golden nugget, that you give up all those kinds of hopes. They usually don't work out that way. And even if they did, look energetically at what you'd be stumbling into, the dark pit of misery when you meet somebody and become enamored of them and them of you, where the other person has already made a commitment and is really not free when they meet you. I've seen this happen repeatedly in my career as a life coach. People who meet and are involved in these triangulated situations, or otherwise known by some people as love triangles, if the person does wind up leaving their original relationship, there is no trust. The way it begins is usually the way it carries through. Are there rare exceptions? Yes, there are. Is this how you want to pin your happiness for the future in relationship? I would suggest perhaps, if it is, you might want to reconsider immediately. I hope this has been of help to you. My name is Beverly Banworth Brown, MS, the same name as my YouTube channel. If you are a subscriber, I thank you for that. And if you're not, please, free of charge, consider becoming a subscriber. Just click the subscribe button underneath the screen. And if you've enjoyed any part of this, even if you totally think I'm full of it, I invite you to leave me a like so I'll know you've been there. And if you'd like to leave a commentary right below the screen, I read every single one if I possibly can. It takes me a while, though, because there are a lot of videos now, over 150 that I've made in my library, and so sometimes it takes me a while. But I cherish every single one of them, and I do try to make a personal response. All right, then. Remember, triangles are not good for anybody, and people who get lured into them often wind up exhausted and spent with very, very little satisfaction to show for it. So set a healthy boundary. Next golden nugget. Decide how much time you want to give this. If you find that there is no movement, no change, that the person is really just wanting to complain, just object, just use you as a sounding board, just basically do emotional dumping on you, please honor yourself sufficiently to realize the time once spent cannot be gotten back. The time and attention given to anyone is one of the most extraordinary gifts that you can give, and that if it is not being honored, you need to say, I am really not available for this kind of topic any longer. I wish you well, and I am moving on. Easier said than done in many cases, but you know what? When you've done it a few times and you've felt the sense of relief and freedom from oppression in a situation that really was going nowhere fast, you've created space for something and someone so much better to come into your life. Bye for now, and many, many blessings.